You're listening to the Axis Real Estate Podcast, the official podcast of Axis Real Estate, your full-service real estate brokerage in Phoenix, Arizona. Hosted by Jason Sellers and Ted Work. Welcome back to the Axis Property Management Podcast. I know we did a rebrand, so I'm not sure if we changed the order of words, but
we are Axis Real Estate.
Axis Real Estate Podcast. With me is the wonderful and excellent Jason Sellers, owner-operator of Axis Real Estate. Nailed it. And I am Ted, your podcast producer. We are back again to talk about the recent real estate market, the highs and lows, kind of where we're at in real estate today, and we're definitely quite a bit different from where our past episodes have been. I know the market has been up and down, and however, I don't know that much about it. That's why you're here. But I know it's definitely changing, and it's changing fast, and it's a very important part of the economy in Scottsdale, especially Phoenix, the wider Phoenix area. So, Jason, how have you been?
I've been great.
Excellent.
Super busy. Just kind of organization, planning over the winter months and doing a whole bunch of stuff. We talked about a little bit of the change from Axis Property Advisors to Axis Real Estate. Not much of a change internally and kind of what we do, but just a little bit of a name thing.
Sure.
We're adding a couple more agents into the mix, which is interesting, adding agents in a time where it's like agents are under more scrutiny with like the lawsuits we'll talk about later.
Sure.
The NAR settlement and all of that. And just kind of we got projects going on. We have we're doing project management for one of our clients, getting ready to bring a property in Central Phoenix to the market, doing a remodel there. We got our property management piece. Mm-hmm. That's always interesting. Never a dull moment there. Yeah. And then, we have several listings for sale, and we could talk a little bit about like what I'm seeing in terms of, what's moving, what's not moving, what's sitting, and how that kind of interacts with the greater market. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So let's get right into just kind of a general idea. Where is the market sitting? I know we, maybe as opposed to about a year ago, where's the market in comparison to about a year ago? Not exact. I'm not trying.
Yeah, right.
This isn't a quiz.
It's just, I pulled this morning the stats from ARMLS, and it's like ironically we're not too far off.
Oh, okay.
Where we were last year. Like so, for December and January are just typically down a little bit slower. Everybody's thinking about holidays. Everybody's having fun and not thinking about real estate too much. But March really picked up. And ironically, March 2024 is very similar to, it's down a little bit, but it's not down too much from March 2023.
Okay.
So it's just the things that are selling and things that are moving are things that are completed and finished and move-in ready, and people can see value in that. A lot of new home sales are pretty big right now too.
Okay.
That's a big one. There's more room because the builder is selling. They have more variables that they can control, whether it's the buy down on an interest rate or an upgrade that they can kind of bake into the cake and give to the buyer. They just have a lot more room to maneuver.
Gotcha.
And bring and sell. So new homes are still selling pretty hot.
Mm-hmm. And so do you see like a change in, I know we've kind of been in a real estate inventory crunch for maybe a few years now, if I'm not to be mistaken. Do you see any movement as far as new builds, or like is it from what I understand, apparently there's a lot more building happening and a lot more apartments kind of coming together, and just kind of anecdotally, a lot around where I live in Chandler, I see a lot more apartment buildings and big complexes like that being
and you gotta realize like the cycle of apartment building is probably 2 to 3 years. I mean, there's one right next to our office here on 7th Street in Bethany Home, just south of Bethany Home a little bit. They're pretty close to finishing up. The exterior is done. They're probably working on all the interiors right now. But that cycle is, they're planning for future growth.
Right.
They start the permitting process, they start planning, they get the land, they get moving forward on it, and then like the market changes or whatever happens.
Right.
A lot of the condos that or apartments that are being finished right now, they're having to give a lot of concessions to get people in.
Okay.
So when you get in there, and I haven't checked anyone specifically, but things like 2 months free rent,
Okay.
first month free, lower security deposit, or whatever deals they need to make to get people in the door,
Okay.
they will make those deals. And then on their balance sheet, long term, what ends up happening is they have leases in place for a year, 2 years,
Sure.
even though they had to make concessions in the first couple of months to get them in there.
Yeah.
Then after they get through the first 2 months, they start to look a lot better.
Yeah.
But it's all about that absorption rate, and certainly right now, it's going to be with all the things coming on the market. It's going to be tough, and people got to make concessions and make deals happen.
Yeah, that's tricky, you know, and that thinking about that lag time, especially because a few years ago, I mean, you know, COVID, so much stuff has happened in the past 5 years that affect the real estate market in really huge ways, and that lag time is so it's so important to think about when you're because 2 to 3 years to put up an apartment building. I mean, it sounds like not that long, but and I guess when you're in the process of doing it, it kind of flies by. Or I don't know what I don't know how it feels.
Well, I think in general, it feels like things move faster now than they did before. Like projects and the market in general. Like the market swings. I always think about it like a car going off the road or something, and you correct back.
Sure.
And your correction gets you back on course a little bit, but then you go too far to the other side.
Yeah.
And so then you got to quickly turn back and go the other side, and you like it goes back and forth, and all of a sudden you're just a little bit spinning out of control. And
Sure.
the market sometimes feels like that, where we're just correcting, and then it's an overcorrection.
Yeah.
And then you have to correct that correction.
Sure.
And it's a constant struggle of maintaining balance.
Right.
And then developers, and then like little guys like us are trying to like figure all that out. But developers are really kind of leading the way and trying to make the money within that.
Sure.
In terms of, you know, bringing the product to the market.
Do you think that, so, I mean, a lot of the information that I've seen as far as real estate is like social media stuff, and shout out to social media out there. But like, do you think that maybe the investors or the people who worry day to day about real estate, do you think that there's kind of a what am I thinking? I'm trying to say, like, is there like one monolith of ideas, or like, because from what it seems is like everybody is talking about one set of circumstances, like, oh, the market's down, and I hear that everywhere in all of my real estate connections that I know, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, inventory is back up, and we have a great, you know, month or two or whatever. Do you think that this like singular thinking, or I guess I'm not exactly sure how to word it, but like, do you think that is a huge do you think that affects the market in noticeable ways? Like I from what I'm basically saying is like everybody is consuming the same information about the market. And so do you think that is contributing to having to do these big overcorrections? Or do you think maybe like trying to be there's this idea in financing and like saving your money that Sally talks about it in BNI, that you want to be investing even in a down market. So do you think that type of idea could carry over into real estate and help to kind of smooth
investing
out?
in the down market is interesting. I saw a recent video clip, the new wide receiver for the Bills, Keon Coleman.
Okay.
Right? And he's like, no, man, I don't buy at like Black Friday, Thanksgiving time. You
Right.
got to buy like coats. You got to buy 2 seasons ahead.
Yeah. Right.
And anyway, I'm not going to butcher the clip. He's a great guy. I love his enthusiasm and already like he loves being in front of the camera.
Yeah.
You can tell. But
Sure.
it's a funny clip. Go check it out. But maybe we'll put a link. I don't know. But
We could see. We'll figure it out. Yeah.
but the idea of not being too caught up in what everybody else is doing at that time and doing your own thing a little bit ahead of the time, a little bit of foresight. One of the things that, mortgage people say is marry the house and date the rate.
Yeah.
So the concept
If
there
it
is,
rhymes, it's true. And
I
that's,
mean- so the idea is simply the expectation that the Federal Reserve will end up dropping interest rates at some point in the future.
Sure.
And that you'll be able to refinance.
Sure.
But the big thing in real estate and with anything that is tied to an interest rate, the government can really control that market by adjusting the rates. So that's what we've seen right now is, rates up, monthly payments are up. People who have a house they bought 3 years ago, they want to move, but they've got a 3% interest rate.
Right.
They go to sell their $500,000 home with that 3% interest rate on it. Quick math, 3% times 500,000. Even that's not their loan amount, but if it was,
Yeah.
that's like 15 grand a year in interest only.
Yeah.
Now, what do they want to do? They want to go buy up. Typically, that's the normal process. They go look at, just for easy numbers, $1 million property.
Okay.
And it's at, well, let's just call it 7% right now. That's $70,000 of interest
Yeah.
versus $15,000 of interest.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make a lot of financial sense.
Right.
So it's very, the real estate market can be manipulated in that way with interest rates
Sure.
relatively easily.
Right. Right. And so one of the other things that I've kind of been hearing about, and I know a little while ago, I can't remember exactly when it happened, but Zillow kind of it folded a little bit. I don't know if they're still around. They're probably still around.
Oh, Zillow's big.
Yeah. See, I'm not here for the information. I'm only asking questions. But I heard that they were trying to offload a lot of their properties. How has that?
Yeah. So their model did fold, and they were one of the first of these. I don't know how you want to classify them, but there were several companies that would buy inventory with the only purpose of selling them.
Right.
The big thing, my takeaway from my years of experience working with investors in real estate, everybody's like, real estate is something tangible. It's physical. You can go look at it. You can see it.
Yeah.
And what a lot of these companies were doing on Wall Street is they're converting that tangible thing into a stock price.
Right.
And selling shares.
Sure.
And so a lot of these larger companies, their CEOs are not that concerned about the actual asset in of itself. They're concerned about what it represents in their share price.
Right.
So they make decisions for the shares, not the property per se.
Right.
And they never look at the property. Like they look at it as a spec sheet, or it hits certain criteria of their analytics or whatever they're looking at. And it's a very tricky way to invest in real estate because it is detached.
Yeah. Right.
And so people, a lot of my investors would say, I won't invest in something that I can't go look at. Like I'm in Phoenix, I'm not going to go invest in Austin.
Sure. Okay.
I like the Austin market. I'm not going to do that because I'm not there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you develop relationships, you meet people. We have clients from out of state who like to invest in Phoenix. We build the relationship with them. They have trust in us and we help them execute those type of things. So there's ways to deal with it. But as a general rule, most people want to have boots on the ground and like be able to see it.
Right.
And that was a big thing with them is like, they were one of the first ones. So there's like Open Door.
Yeah.
Zillow was doing it. There's a couple of ones I can't think of off the top of my head, but they just were the first ones to say, no, we're not going to do that anymore.
Sure. Sure.
And a lot of it has to do with, it's a great tool, or it's a great philosophy when the market's going up. So when they see the market indicators that it's going to be flat or slightly down,
Yeah.
it's very difficult for them to make their margins.
Sure.
And that's the key. And I think they realized that first and got out.
Right. And so their business strategy was kind of like buy up as many homes at as low a price as possible. And then do you think it was to try to, I mean, it's kind of this principle in business that when you own enough of the market share, then you start to be able to make a lot of the rules for the market in a lot of ways. Do you think that's kind of what it was, is like own as many houses as possible so that we can dictate what prices are going to be for the larger market? I guess that's the goal in capitalism, right?
Well, I don't think that was one of their benchmarks in their philosophy behind it.
Sure.
That is too much of a aspiration to achieve. I think that's like that would be very difficult to bank on that component.
Yeah.
But I think in general, what they're looking at is the idea, and maybe we'll see it in some of the other statistics. One of the news articles I saw recently was a company bought a piece of land in North Scottsdale off of, I think like Pima and Dynamite up that way, in North Scottsdale. Anyway, they're converting, or they're going from office and they're doing a rezone to residential.
Okay.
So I think the residential market is pretty strong.
Yeah.
And is this safer? Maybe that's the right word. Maybe it's a safer market right now for developers.
Okay.
Certainly, well, there's a lot to that. I don't want to say that as a blanket statement, because there is like the industrial side,
Sure,
where Phoenix has become a regional hub.
Yeah.
And there's tons of transactions
Sure.
going on the west side, up the Loop 303.
Yeah.
You had the Taiwan Semiconductor that plant going in, which is interesting. So there's a lot of movement. But going back to the idea of the residential side, people still got to live somewhere.
Yeah.
Population's still growing. People are still moving to Arizona.
For sure.
And so we don't need as much office space as we did. I mean, going through COVID and the whole work from home, people realize, hey, maybe we can run a little bit leaner of an office.
Right.
We don't have to have a big space. People enjoy working from home, or they take time and do split 3 days at home, 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, or something like that.
Well, just like, just the fact that it's possible to work from home in a lot of these situations, whereas maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was just not possible to work from home in a lot of these positions, and it's so interesting because looking kind of at the wider economy, jobs in general are a lot more computer and like work desk oriented. Like Excel sheets are needed for basically every single industry, and just the technologifying, that's a word, of work. Of work is I wonder how much that's contributing to like lowering how much office space is being developed and all that sort of thing. But getting back to kind of Zillow and those kinds of companies, do you think the main issue was that they were snatching up these, purchasing these houses? And I don't want to make it sound nefarious, but like purchasing these houses and then not necessarily having them be inhabited? Like do you think a big portion of that is homes that sit empty, even though they're kind of they're like the amount of work to put people in those homes is just not happening? Do you think that's part of why maybe we're getting a slowdown? I know there's a lot of different factors, people coming here and companies getting out of the business and all sorts of things. But do you think that's part of the problem?
There is a transition from the American dream of owning a home to the realization that a lot of people coming into the workforce now, a lot of the younger generation, is like, you know what? Maybe I'm never going to own a home.
Yeah.
And they're kind of accepting to that. As far as Zillow goes, and like they played a role a little bit, a lot of it's the interest rate right now.
Okay.
I mean, it's the inflation, it's interest rates. But certainly this concept that Zillow maybe represents in terms of taking the single family home out of the hands of individual homeowners and putting it into the hands of investors on Wall Street.
Right. Yeah.
That for sure is playing a role.
Yeah.
To what extent, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it is a thing. I mean, it is. What was the movie, The Big Short? Do you see that one? I mean, that was a great movie about the.
I don't know how much I understood of it, but
the mortgage meltdown. I mean, that was just. That was an interesting insight into that whole thing, and we lived through it and worked through it. And I started my brokerage right when, basically all that was happening.
Sure.
I transitioned from doing loans and financing.
Yeah.
I had my real estate license at the time, but then I just transitioned to full-time real estate, which was interesting. But that definitely plays a role.
Yeah.
And now on top of that, you have the interest rates. And like the example I was giving before, it's like, it's very difficult for people to sell their home now.
Okay. Yeah. And kind of because of all the things we were talking about, we're locked into low interest rates, and you're trying to move up, and it's just monetarily, it doesn't make any sense. But so getting kind of back to basics as far as the interest rates are concerned, what is the goal with that? So let's say the market is heating up and there's a lot of movement in the market. Is the goal with raising interest rates to try and cool the market down? That's what I understand is to bring things down so that the market doesn't get into this runaway sort of scenario where prices just are infinitely growing, right? And that's kind of the goal with that. But and it hurts and benefits different types of people, right? But that is that kind of the idea behind raising the interest rates?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So the way that I think about the interest rates and how it kind of affects the day to day is like, you go out and you buy lunch, maybe you put it on your credit card or whatever, but usually that's a cash transaction, quote unquote. Sure. It's like you're going to pay it off this month. It's not really affecting you long term. Right. The government really can't control too much about those kinds of transactions and that kind of inflation. Sure. So what impacts what areas and what sectors they have greater control over are things that are tied back to the general population through a loan or through interest rates. Okay. So the car that you bought with 6% interest or whatever it was, now when interest rates are up, the value of that car has to go down to be equal to your current payment. Right. In theory, right? Sure. Same thing with that housing example is, interest rates are double. That means that $500,000 house to pay the same that you got it for at 3%. If the rate's at 6%, you'd have to buy it for half the price today. Sure. So that's where there's really an effect on inflation and slowing the market down, is because when people come into the market and try to buy something, they're put into that position where they have to recognize that difference in price. Yeah. And so then they're making different decisions. They're making decisions not to buy, or in a lot of cases, people are making a decision not to sell. Right. And that's where our inventory comes into play, where it's like, it's not crazy out of whack because a lot of people don't want to sell. Yeah. So it's not like our normal market where people would be, the same percentage of people would want to be selling, but then there's just fewer buyers. Yeah. It's actually fewer sellers and fewer buyers. Sure. So we end up in sort of a normal situation, even though right now it is, it's a buyer's market, but it's more of a normal type of buyer's market versus a, buying frenzy or, anything else. Right. Right.
So let's move away from Zillow. We don't want to keep saying their name, but let's get into kind of what you guys have been changing up and mixing up with the business. I know you went kind of through a rebrand a little bit. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So the concept behind the rebrand is just buying a new website. We bought AxisRE.com, shorter than Axis Property Advisors. Sure. We would want to present our company as more of a regional brand versus just a local brand only. So we want to be both. We want to have the local market knowledge that we do already have, but we also want to allow other agents to help us grow and to come aboard and push our brand and our concepts, which is the fundamental concept is just basically doing the work for clients. Yeah. I mean, whatever our clients want us to do, We could talk about one of these things I had pulled up was one of our clients was interested in what their Scottsdale condo might sell for and where it was relative to the peak of the market.
Okay.
So we do the research on that and we find out. So again, coming back to the idea, we're a service company. We value our clients. We value our peers and other agents and other brokers. And we just want to do the work for our clients. And that's the bottom line. It's like, we don't have to do a whole lot else, but provide that information and enjoy the work.
Yeah, just really focus in on one type of real estate, because I know there's all different elements and ways in which you can be connected to kind of the real estate market, and it's far too confusing for me to understand.
Well, it all comes down to the relationship. So,
but yeah,
the different aspects of real estate. So we do we base on the relationship itself. So when I have a client and they ask me to help them with a commercial property, it's not something that we shy away from. We have done those before. If it does reach into a sector where we don't have the experience, that we collaborate with somebody about it. But in general, we're building that relationship with our client.
Yeah.
And what they want to do, we're their eyes and ears in the real estate field. So whether it's buying a residential investment property and having our team manage it, or it's renting out a commercial property and having us manage that lease, we're able to navigate those things and provide best service for them. That's the ultimate goal. It's just the service component.
Yeah.
So giving agents that ability to, they have a good client, the client wants to use their services, but they want to go a little bit different direction. We can help them with that.
Sure. And so we've only got a few more episodes left in the episode, or we've only got a few more minutes left in the episode. So I guess we'll just do kind of a wrap up of what you would like. What's something that a listener can take away from this episode about the modern or the current market as of May 2024? And kind of what's some advice you would give someone who is, let's say, we talked about people who are having trouble getting their first property. What's a piece of advice you would give to those people to kind of help them through that?
Advice to somebody who is looking to acquire their first property.
Yes.
I think you have to be realistic with what's out there and what you want. And so if you start to set up your goals in terms of what what you want to achieve, home ownership is still a great long-term investment in yourself and your property. So be active. I mean, I think that's the number one thing, is to be active, look at the market, understand what's going out there, whether it's now or any time in the last 20 years. Any client that I've talked to, I always tell them, don't look at one property, look at several properties. Yeah. Because you're looking for either the right deal and how do you know? You don't know unless you've seen a bunch of these. Yeah. And you're like, oh, like that one's a little bit different, and here's why. But just like having that confidence of knowing what it is, and that's also a little bit of a plug for using a real estate agent and somebody who does have that experience already built in, is to gain the information, look at the market if that's the way you want to go, watch the rates, look at your budget. Yeah. Look at your job and how all those pieces fit together.
Yeah. It is a lot of moving pieces, and that's why you would want to go to someone who has the expertise, and especially there's a lot of money floating around in the real estate market,
And I'll bring that back to what I was saying before about like one of our core principles is to like service our clients. Servicing our client doesn't always mean selling them a home. Right. It doesn't always mean listing a property. It's educating them and making sure that they make the right decision and that they feel confident in the decision that they made. That requires describing the variables, describing a little bit of the market, describing all those facets that they have to consider so that they can reach the right decision. Yeah. Because it's a little bit different for everybody.
Yeah. And speaking from experience, I had a lot of help finding my new place in Chandler, and it's a townhome, and I think for me it was the perfect type of property. And so I can never remember if it's a townhome or a condominium. What's the difference? Do you remember the difference? Studs in versus studs out or something?
Condo, you at an ownership level, the condo, you own the airspace inside. Townhomes, you also own the piece of land underneath.
Got it.
And so the thing that I always think about to help me remember is a condo is typically stacked.
Okay.
Like there's a unit above you.
Okay.
That is a typical condo. It doesn't have to be, but that's one of the giveaways.
Sure.
Because then you can't own
Right.
the ground.
That makes
sense. A townhome is usually 1 or 2 stories, sometimes 3 stories up and down vertically. And then you also own that little piece of land underneath your townhome.
Gotcha. Well, hey, Jason, it's been a wonderful episode. Thank you for joining me today. I'm looking forward to the next one. And until next time, we'll see you guys later. Thank you for listening to the Axis Real Estate Podcast. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Just search for the Axis Real Estate Podcast. If you'd like to get in contact with the show, please email mail@axispropertyadvisors.com. You can visit Axis Real Estate online at axisre.com. This podcast was produced by T-Door Productions. Theme song by Delicate Steve.